and welcome back to the channel. I know how frustrating it can be when you leave an interview and you start to question some of your answers, like how concise were you? How coherent? Was I rambling too much? Did I even answer the question that the interviewer was asking of me? Or sometimes you might even think, if only I'd mentioned that one extra thing, it would have made the answer seem so much better and I would have a better chance of getting this job. Well, in this video, I'm going to cover the exact technique I used when I did my Amazon interview using the STAR method, and I'm going to give you examples of what this can look like in real life. And if you hang around to the end of the video, I'm going to give you a bonus tip which can help your videos seem just that much more considered and more thoughtful. If you've never heard of the STAR mechanism or the STAR way of answering interview questions, it's a really simple but effective way of conveying information to someone in a small, concise package. And that's really what you want in an interview, right? You want the interviewer to feel as if they've asked you a question and you've given them the exact amount of detail which helps them to make a decision on if you are the right person for the job. The reason the STAR mechanism is so effective is because it forces you to think about the information you actually want to get across. Because of the way it's structured, it makes you be more concise in what you're saying. It makes you think about the relevant facts that you want to include. And so this makes you more accurate in what you're saying. And also it improves your credibility because you're only giving the facts which are relevant to the question. And finally, it lets you showcase your impact. So this is the effect that you had on the result based off of your actions that you did. So the word STAR is actually an acronym, and it stands for situation, task, action, and result. So let's kind of go through those. So the first one is situation. This is the context that you're working in, right? So this allows an interviewer to kind of place themselves into your shoes when you were delivering this project or whatever type of work it was, right? It sets the boundaries for what you're about to go into next. Try and keep this short and concise and relevant. You want to give just enough information that the interviewer can imagine themselves about to do this piece of work, but also they can understand the scope of what you're working in. They're not going to start asking about various things which are not relevant as follow-up questions. The T is then for task, and this is where you describe the challenge that you are facing, right, and what the certain complexities or nuances of that project were. So for example, this could be you had to deliver a project within 8 weeks, which was initially scoped to be delivered in 10. So the challenge was, how do I deliver something in a shorter time frame with the same amount of people? Then we move on to A, and the A is for action. And this is this is where it's your time to shine. This is where you really showcase what you did. And it's really important in this part to not use the word we or the team generally. Focus on yourself. And so this will mean saying things like, I did this, or I was responsible for this element, or because of my actions, or I led this team. So try and make it very specific about what you did and what your responsibilities were within the action that happened. Remember to remain truthful here, right? Don't say something that the team did, but credit yourself for it. You want to build credibility. And if you had help, make sure you said, look, I understood I needed help, so I got help from XYZ person. They allowed me to do this. There's no shame in asking for help or saying that you had help, but just make it upfront and clear. Make it clear that that help allowed you to do the action that you did. Something else that's quite useful or quite impactful in this action part is if you've had a hard decision to make and you've got several routes, kind of explaining at a high level what your thought process was and why you chose a particular route shows decisiveness, it shows thoughtfulness, and it shows leadership. So if you had examples of that, definitely include those in. And the final part of the STAR mechanism is the R, which stands for results. And this is where you summarize everything together. So you kind of summarize how your actions related back to the task in hand in the situation that you are in. And here it's really important to kind of give data which supports what you're trying to say. So wherever possible, use statistical measures like we were X% faster or X% quicker, or we had a customer satisfaction of X amount. And this helps to give credibility to the actions, and it gives some level of measure as to the success that you had. And by doing it this way, what you're doing is you're communicating the impact that you had in very tangible terms, and you're showcasing to your interviewer that if I were to hire this person, this is the type of impact they would bring to my team or to my organization. It also is a nice summary point to the question at hand, right? You've given everything, all the information, you've given what you did, and now here is the showstopper, here's the results. The interviewer can go ahead and make their notes, and then they can start to ask follow-up questions. But you've been very upfront, very clear, logical, and methodical in the way that you're providing the answer to them. Let's now take a look at the STAR method in action. So let's say the interviewer asks you a question, and their question is, can you please tell me about a time that you had to deliver a project within a deadline and what you did to ensure the deadline was met? So here, first let's break down the question and kind of think about what are some of the things that they are looking for, or what are some of the things that you can showcase as part of the answer to this question. So of course the obvious things that come out are managing deadlines, project management, time management. But then here's an opportunity for you to showcase things like innovative thinking and thinking out of the box, delivering results, potentially leading a team, planning and foresight. So there's a few different elements and ways you can answer this question and showcase the skills that you have. So let's take a look at the first part of this question, and this is the situation. So here, you remember, if you think back to what the S is, you're describing the context that you're in and the boundaries that you're working around. So here's the situation. When I was working at X company, I led a team of 15 people. And my team was responsible for providing or running reports for other third-party companies. Now, one year, the marketing team ran a really successful campaign, and so we had a surge of requests for new reports to be created for new onboarded customers. Now, these reports need to be submitted to a governmental body for review by these end customers at the end of every April. And so it's imperative that we crunched the numbers, did the reports, and provided the reports back to the end customers before the deadline that they needed to submit it to the government for review. If we didn't, there was a risk of financial penalties and brand reputation damage. So that kind of nicely summarizes what the situation was, what your role was in that team, and it kind of leads us into the task at hand. So one thing you can introduce here is the challenge, right? So let's say at the beginning of April, one of my team members resigned and two are off sick. And so the challenge was to deliver all of these new reports to all of the new customers within the same deadline, but with a reduced team capacity. So it's very clear now what the situation is and how the challenge and what you had to do and what you were tasked with delivering ties into the picture as a whole. Now we can move on to the action, and this is where, remember, it's your chance to shine. So as a follow-up to the task, here's what we could say. So we can say something like this. We can say, I noticed that the longest process in the report generation process was some manual data entry. I also noticed that when customers submitted their data to us for report generation, it was always submitted in a consistent format. And so what this meant was we could try and automate some of this manual data entry, which was taking up a lot of the team's time. So what I decided to do was map out a process flow of everything that happens when the data comes in. I then decided to create a script, and I spent about 2 days trying to build the script myself. I then came to the realization that this was not something I could achieve, and so I went ahead and asked one of my colleagues from the engineering team to help build this script. Once this was built and tested, I then held a training session to train the rest of my team on how to use the particular script to help automate some of that data entry. So here, we've got clear actions of exactly what you did in response to that task. Next, we can then move on to the results stage, which will help tie all of this together. Now, remember, we want to make the results as data-driven and as metric-heavy as possible. So something we can say is, through the script and the process that I built, we were able to reduce down the data processing time from around 4 hours per customers to 15 minutes per customer. This meant, despite being 3 team members down, the rest of the team was able to generate all of the reports for all of the existing customers and the newly onboarded customers well ahead of, or even what would be better here is to say 3 days or 4 days ahead of the agreed timelines and deadlines that we had agreed with our customers. This not only reduced the stress on the team, but it meant we created a positive brand image in the eyes of our customers, which will help them to re-sign on for the next year to use our services. So of course this is a fictitious example, but I hope you can see how that STAR mechanism allows you to tie together a situation, a challenge, the actions you did, and then finally the results in a nice, concise way that the interviewer can consume easily and understand easily. A question that gets answered really frequently after you've answered that initial interview question is, if you could do this again, what would you do differently? And the reason they ask this is because they want you to show that you have an element of continual improvement. You've done some sort of retrospective analysis on what could have been better, because no process is perfect, or there's always some room for improvement. And it shows, some self-critical thinking. So kind of going back to that example above, one thing that you could say as a way to improve was that, if you remember in the example, I said it took me 2 days to try and build out that script. Right now, what I could say is, before even trying to build that script, I created the process flow. I understood everything that needed to happen. But I realized that we were under time pressure, and scripting skills is not something I'm really strong at. So instead of trying to build this myself, I asked for help. I went to one of my engineering colleagues. They got it done in a matter of hours, something that took me 2 days, plus then the engineering effort to build the script after that. So we reduced that timeline, and we were able to help the team to be even more efficient. So have a think about this. When you're looking at your interview questions and you're crafting your STAR mechanisms, always try to think, if I went back and did this again, what would I do better? And offer this information to your interviewer, because it will show that critical thinking, that retrospective analysis, and the fact that you are always looking to improve and to get better. Now, of course, I don't recommend that every time you get asked a question, anywhere you go, you need to bring out the STAR mechanism. But it is super useful in interviews, or even if you're kind of collecting together information for your end of year performance review, right? You want those hard-hitting facts with digestible content that is concise and coherent to provide to your management teams to say, look, here's all the great work that I've been doing. So the next time you come across this type of scenario, give the STAR mechanism a try. You may find it really helps to streamline and organize your thinking. And finally, if this video did help you, please let me know in the comments below. I love to read through it. And don't forget to check out the other videos on my channel, which are around careers in tech, and productivity in general. I'd also appreciate if you could drop a like or even subscribe to the channel, as it really helps me out.